Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you so much for coming. I know that sometimes when people hear about pronunciation, they get a little bit scared and go, oh my God, no, I want to keep my afternoon for something a little bit lightheaded. But the thing is that something that we discussed a little bit in the chat is that if you truly want to teach listening, then you do have to go back to the understanding of the message. And as it is, as I explained, or as I mentioned, alluded to in the presentation, at the moment, think about it, guys. Do we, I mean, I'm guilty as much as anyone else, you know, I'm a CELTA trainer, so I do that a lot. Do we actually teach listening, or do we just test the way that they deal with the information? If you remember, you know, the list of micro skills for listening, there's perception and decoding skills at the top, but one of them is dealing with information, and that is what we test. We deal with understanding just meaning, recognizing pieces of information, comprehending text in depth, inferring information. All that is dealing with information. But what happens if they cannot process the information because they cannot get to the information? They don't understand the information. They cannot decode the message. And that is the problem. We do not teach this decoding. I'm not saying that we're not teaching it at all, but we tend to be testing it more than teaching it. So that's what we need. I think that's something that I hope the main message of the video that you can take away is that trying to shift the way we think, going forward towards more something like actually teaching the decoding. So I know bottom-up skills kind of like sound, oh my God, what is this? But it is completely feasible. That's the thing. Therese, okay, so there's somebody who said something, and all right, let's move on to, first of all, Aoife, what do you think about the testing, teaching, or debate that we're having?
Yeah, it's very interesting. And just to say, first of all, I really enjoyed the talk. It really, you know, got me thinking, and particularly, you know, in relation to a few things that you said, really, you know, hit home. And one of them in particular was about this idea of students feeling like the listening is out of their control. And I'd forgotten that feeling of learning the language and feeling that, you know, out of control, and that, you know, you don't know when the teacher is going to stop, or if they're going to rewind or go back as we're doing now, or replay it, or if you're even going to have a chance to hear it again. So I was just wondering, you know, what strategies do you employ to help the students feel more like they have some kind of control over this listening? And I know one of these ways is breaking down these micro skills, but how do you present this to the students? Because I know some of my students are very intuitive in how they want to learn. They don't really want to break everything down. So how do you kind of present it and get them interested and explain what you're going to do when it's so different to how they normally engage with listening material with this top-down approach that we usually have? That would be my first question.
Yeah, I mean, this is true. They're mostly used to the top-down approach. Most of the training programs that we do have, the teacher training programs, they go with the top-down approach. Now, Gabby had a very interesting question, which was, why was that? And you came on, and Aoife, you mentioned the fact that most probably it's a Cambridge thing because most of the exams use that. I mean, let's be honest, for the last, I mean, we've been in education for a while. For the last, what, 20, 25 years, those are top-down approaches, the only approach I've seen. Yeah. I did notice, I think it was around 15 years ago when English File introduced the phonemic alphabet. And I personally remember freaking out, going, oh, no, what is this? I am teaching English. I am not teaching this weird symbols. At the time, it was revolutionary and nobody wanted to do it. But even that, we still use the top-down approach. So how can we do it? Well, it's the same way as, you know, how when you teach a new piece of a new structure, let's say present perfect continuous. You don't go in telling them, oh, well, today we will teach the present perfect continuous. Otherwise they start, you know, losing it because they go, oh no, not grammar again. And it sounds so complex. You just go and you show, you know, you somehow, somewhere elicit or highlight the language from a text, and then from that you work on the meaning and then the form and then the pronoun. Well, it's the same thing. Don't go and you know, don't go start pronunciation activities going, today we will learn about connected speech and assimilation, because that will just blank, 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 blank. They will just stop listening. Just go back and say, especially with something fun, like ice cream and nice, you know, an ice cream and an ice cream dress. Go with something a little bit suggest. What is this? Is it this picture or this picture? Okay, so let's continue a little bit with this weird sounds. So basically, do not touch the word pronunciation. Do not even mention the word connected speech. Just show them, guys, I want you to realize something about English. You know, let's see. So something very general. Then at the end, like we do with some students that ask, oh, miss, what's the name of that structure? Like at the end, you can just mention what, if somebody says, oh, if I want to learn more about this, you just say, well, in a book, it's called assimilation. Okay, but that's it. So I think that's the way to do it. You can obviously, you know, stop the listening as, you know, as you go along. But I think the main way to teach and to stop this feeling of helplessness is to just change the way we approach listening, drop this gist, drop the specific info and the detailed understanding for a little while, and just go back and just say, you know, guys, let's just work on like the basic of listening. You can't, I mean, right now, I'm in Pakistan, right? And I'm desperately trying to understand what people are saying around me when they're speaking in Urdu, and I'm catching 1 or 2 words. That's as much as I can. But they're not going to start asking me, you know, when they see me, they say hi in their language and then continue in English. They're not going to ask me for a whole conversation and then ask me for comprehension. That would be ridiculous. I don't have that level of understanding. Same thing we're asking our students. We are asking them for a really high level of understanding, dealing with new information when they haven't been taught how to decode the small info. So there's kind of this weird thing. Why are we doing this? Why? I'm guilty of it. I'm a trainer. Why are we doing this? I mean, that's a very good question, Aoife. Why do you think we're doing this? Why has it been that way? I mean, I don't think there's an answer, but why do you think?
Raise their awareness of the fact that they may not understand all of the skills connected to listening. Is sometimes I ask them to do shadowing. So when we listen to a dialogue, I give them roles, and you are person A, you're person B. We're going to do the dialogue again. I'm going to play it. You're going to say it, but at the same time as the recording, as the audio. And then they always find that it's faster in some places and slower than other places. And then they notice this, you know, assimilation, or, you know, they notice these words are dropped or sounds are dropped more when they have to follow the rhythm of English, and the stress timed rhythm is completely different. Sometimes they're actually speaking too fast compared to the native speaker, or they're not using the stress and in the right places. So yeah, I think this can provide awareness as well too.
That's a great activity.
So yeah, it's really nice to do it with them. And I think, you know, even they might find the dialogue, the content of it, they can understand it, this top-down approach. They can answer true or false questions on it, or whatever. But to actually to understand the speech and the rhythm of the speech is a completely different listening skill. Yeah, I think so.
Completely agree. I mean, somebody in the Q&As is saying
yes,
that there's an intrinsic link between prone and bottom-up listening. If the students don't have the sounds in their heads, they find it difficult to decode the sound. Definitely, and I think that was the thinking behind New English File, or English File at the time, that really did give me a heart attack, which was, you know, you need to be aware of these things. I mean, let's be honest, in the teacher trainings, we do have there is a session on pron. Actually, technically, there should be 3 sessions. There's, in general, there are generally around 2 to 3 sessions on pronunciation. So first it's on the sounds, then it's on the words, and word and sentence level, then we go into connected speech. So there is, however, we never make that link, that we never we are never showing them at any point that, listen, these things, well, these are going to trip your students when they're listening, and you're going to need to be aware of that. We never connect the dots for the trainees. And let's be honest, it's our job to connect the dots, because I don't think the trainees can do that. So yeah, there is this link, and yet we don't ask them to do it. We don't push it. We don't push for it, and neither do we even make it ourselves as trainers, which is a big problem. Kata was saying something about, can you suggest more activities to raise pre-instance awareness in order to better deal with listening tasks? I think Aoife, the one that you just said, was amazing.
Yes, yeah, I think that really works, shadowing, and you can do it with very, very simple dialogues, even with beginner and elementary levels. It really changes their awareness of how they're listening and the way that they're listening. Other things, I find recording the students. I'm using Vocaroo a lot and getting them to record themselves, and then using these materials as a listening as well too, can be really helpful as well. And yeah, I think just a general awareness of pronunciation, stress, the content words, even, a lot of students aren't aware, even at B1, B2 level, that, English speakers only listen to the stress. We don't listen to the structure words. We don't listen to the auxiliary verbs. We don't listen to the prepositions. We don't listen to the articles. We are only listening to the content words. And when students find out this, and they start to listen and maybe just underline the stressed words, and when they start to realize this skill, their listening improves a lot faster, because they're not listening to every word in the sentence like you have to do in some languages.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. Is I mean, there was I can't remember exactly the details, but there was this thing about how in general, most the stress is for nouns is on the first syllable, and you should just be, and there was this I can't remember the exact thing, but there was an activity I remember whereby you lower the volume of the listening, and you try to pick up only and you would hear only the stressed syllable, because that would be the one with the highest volume, and then from that you would try to either recreate the text or compare it with the text, and this would highlight and raise the awareness of the stress in the words. So there's loads of little things you can do. I mean, that's one activity. The one you mentioned, they can record their voice, and then you can send them, through WhatsApp or through whatever messaging app they use. You can send them the same sentence said by yourself as a native speaker or near native speaker, then you send it, and then they can compare, because they all have the ability to play the two, and that's amazing. Yeah, Dictogloss, absolutely amazing. You do that, and basically you can ask them to just like Kathleen is saying, you can, you read the text, and they just write the stressed words, and then from that, once they have just the stressed word, they try to recreate the text. Loads of things. I mean, transcripts at the back of the textbooks, you can, they can read, and then they can read at the same time as listening, underline the words, like you mentioned, underline the words they can't hear. That's a great one. Underline the words you read but you cannot hear. And they'd be like, but they're not saying it. Yes, they are, but in their very weird way, which makes it impossible for you to hear it. So it's raising awareness, and then afterwards you can ask them, to talk to each other. And what are the words that maybe there's a sentence, spooky text. What do you mean, Kata? Yeah, the words you don't hear, the ghost words. Yeah, that's a good one. You can also ask them to, for example, somebody says something, and you try to note down everything they say, which is quite close to what I was mentioning in the presentation. But instead of the text coming from the teacher, always give back the power to the students, always shift everything towards, they can create their own material. They can say something, then they in pairs, they have to, the other person has to write down what they hear, and then they compare the two texts and see what they didn't hear, what they heard differently, maybe even go into features of connected speech, you know, like little by little.
Yeah, that's a really great idea. And can I just ask you as well too, Cristina, you know, you're looking at pronunciation in a very detailed way. Was there ever a point in time where you were intimidated by pronunciation?
Oh God, yes.
Yes.
God, I was terrified of it. I mean, quite recently, because basically, as a CELTA trainer, you have. Yeah, I think everybody. You're completely right, Kathleen. As a CELTA trainer, there's two roles. There's the MCT, which is the main course tutor, which if anything goes wrong, it's her or his fault. And there's the ACT that, you know, we do what we've been told, we know what to do, but still, it's not our main responsibility. So what happens is at the beginning, the MCT always says to the ACT, what session would you like not to do? And technically we always go, oh, phonology, pronunciation, you do it. And the MCT has to say yes, because so yeah, and that's literally what happened. I got promoted to MCT session, and I asked my ACT, which one do you not want to do? Praying that she would say nothing, I'm cool with it. And obviously she came up with pronunciation. I was like, oh, so I had to do this. I mean, I had done lots of work on connected speech and elision and summation during my LSA, during my Delta, but I completely forgot about it. It's only when I started teaching it and I was like, oh, it's gonna be horrible. And I spent hours. I'm not the type that has Scott Thornbury book by my bedside. I've read it, I think, once, maybe not in all, but I have read it, but not, you know, not constantly. So I was petrified by the idea of pron. But you know what? By having to teach it the same way that novice teachers learn about grammar, especially native speakers, they don't know about grammar because they've never been taught. The only way they learn is by having to teach it, because you have to learn through, you have to read your rules and then know what are the questions. Same thing. I had to teach it, so I had to learn about it. Not the nicest experience, but once you do it, you go like, actually, it's not that bad. It just has such a bad reputation. It just freezes us because of those weird alphabetical symbols, those weird phonemic chants. I mean, what about you, Aoife? How did you, have you ever felt that way?
Yes, I think I had to teach pronunciation pretty early on. So the same thing I had to kind of learn. I learned as I went along. So probably like everybody, I was learning with the students. I was learning this is what I have to teach. And then I was teaching it then the next day. And then after teaching it again and again, it became a lot easier, of course. Yeah, and I just, Kathleen is saying about snippets in class. So I do a thing in my class, which is called pronunciation gym, where I say, we're going to have a 10-minute workout. It's a gym. You're not going to really enjoy it that much because nobody really enjoys working out at the gym, but it's good for the muscles of your mouth, and you need to move your mouth in a different way and to use your voice and your throat and everything. And this is how we're going to do it. So, you know, sometimes it's just with vowel sounds for European speakers. And I try to do it like little and often. Okay, so this is our 10-minute pronunciation gym. And sometimes they kind of groan, and then other times they quite enjoy it and they say, okay, it's the gym time now. We'll do it, teacher. I was going to ask you as well too. Yeah, how do you, Cristina, what works best, do you think, you know, because sometimes you might need an intensive session to really go into the detail with pronunciation to train up your class. And then other times, you know, maybe less time. What's a kind of a good amount of time to spend on pronunciation, say, if you have a weekly class?
I mean, frankly, I completely agree with what Kathleen said and what you said, which is a little every time. I don't think we should overwhelm them with a massive thing. So maybe input on one day, then practice, a little bit of practice, then more practice on the second day. But it has to be It has to become something that is just there. It's just a given.
Yeah.
You know, if we make it like once in a while, then people just go, oh no, and then it's okay, I'll just switch off this, you know, I'll just switch off the sound for like an hour, pretend I don't hear anything, and then go back to normal class. So I think we should do a little every day, and this is quite important. This relinks to one of the questions, which is what happens if you don't know anything about connected speech? Can you actually do bottom-up listening? Well, yeah, you don't have to know everything there is to know about connected speech. You don't have to know about linking. You don't have to know about X, Y, Z. You want to teach assimilation, or you want to show them that there is this? Yeah, just tell them, okay, you know what? Just learn a little bit of assimilation. Know that green paint becomes green paint. Just know that. Remember that. Put it up, and then, you know, just do a little bit about it. You don't need to read everything there is to know. You do not need to become a prawn buff in order to be able to teach bottom-up listening. We teach, some of us teach grammar, even though we don't have the best of control over, you know, the meta language. We know what it is, what it should be. Why? I have no idea, unless you have to teach it. So that's what I'm trying to say, is that just because you don't know much about connected speech, it's okay. Do you know what assimilation is? Is that one sound gets transformed into another, so that instead of going from here to here, your mouth goes in the middle, so it's easier. So that idea of gymnastic for your mouth. If you understand that little concept, go online, go into books. There are, I mean, most course books do not have bottom-up listening activities. Some do. There's one by National Geographic. I think it's called by Cengage, I think. And I remember seeing a couple of bottom-up listening activities. So there are a couple there. So you can find it in some course books, difficult. You can find whole pronunciation books. I've seen them. But also use the transcripts. Use what's in the course book already. Do not go into too much. Just know what it means, and then know what assimilation is, and then just take from the internet. There's so much on the internet. Aoife, you mentioned one of the videos that you really like, that even I used a little bit for my presentation. Which one was it?
Sorry, one of the videos, was it a pronunciation with Emma on YouTube? Yeah, she's quite good. She has it's good also if you're in, you know, a socially distant class and you're wearing a mask, as I am now. I sometimes like to show her on YouTube pronunciation with Emma. She's very clear, and you can really see her mouth and exactly how it's moving, especially if you're wearing a mask. There's short videos too. They're like 3 to 5 minutes, a lot of them. And then you can use that to base your lesson around as well too. There's a question just come in from Katha. So she's asking about, how do you differentiate between pronunciation or listening? Is there a boundary?
The problem is that listening is the decoding of sounds, and pronunciation is also sounds. Is there a boundary? Do we need a boundary? I mean, this thing is, if you're going to start your class going, oh, today I will teach you that, yeah, you need a boundary, but there's none. Frankly, you don't need the meta language. You don't need the labels. You just go, okay, today I will help you improve your listening. Now, how are you going to do that? You might use top-down approach. You may use bottom-up approach. But what you're doing is just improving the listening skills. That's all you're trying to do. So I don't think we need really. In academic assignments. In academic assignments, what about you, Aoife? What would you say? Listening or prawn? Is there a boundary when it comes to academic assignments?
Well, what kind of academic assignments in particular? Is this like to do a, so for doing like a listening exam, do you think?
I'm thinking maybe, yeah, Kata, if you can explain it to us, that'd be lovely. I think she's just coming on, if you feel like you want to join us. Delta. Oh, Delta, LSAs. She's talking about her LSAs here. Well, let me tell you basically about me. I did, the whole thing about assimilation and elision and all that was when I was teaching grammar, actually. I was teaching, what was I doing? I was teaching, I think, the past simple. And this is the first time I noticed the elision of the T sound or the dis sound or whatever marker you have for the past simple. That's when I noticed it. So I did my grammar on that. And then I did a whole LSA bottom-up listening. It was a listening lesson. It was a listening lesson, and the LSA was about bottom-up listening. So that's how I did it in my academic assignment on Delta. I passed it quite nicely. So I'm not a Delta trainer, so I wouldn't know, but I think that would work. What do you think, Aoife?
Yeah, I agree. I'm not a Delta trainer either, so I'm not sure the specific requirements of that exam. But yeah, I think all the skills are mixed. We don't just use skills in isolation, and even in exams, you need, you're using a mixture of skills that and different sort of soft skills and things when you're working in any kind of an exam setting. So
I have to admit, I know there are skills, the 4 skills teaching, speaking, writing, listening, and reading. And I know we have the systems with the grammar and the lexis, and one of them being, some of them consider PRON being one of the systems. I haven't seen a PRON lesson in I don't know how many years, I have to admit. Most of the time, like you said, Aoife, it's linked. It's integrated in whatever skill you want the end product to be, then you integrate that. Because Kata, think about the reaction of the students when it's just going to be pronunciation for like 90, let's say if it's a CELTA lesson, it's 40 minutes. I've done my Delta way too far. I can't remember how long are the Delta lessons. Sorry, too old. Can't remember them. So if somebody can tell me how long the Delta lessons used to be for Delta 2, 60 minutes, really? Oh God, that's like a memory I don't want. I just want to erase it from my head. But yeah, for 60 minutes talking about pronunciation, your students will hate you. They will hate you. So it goes back to what we were saying, little snippets, but constantly, every day. I think little something, could be a warmer, could be a very nice little warmer. So what did I not say? What did I say wrong for green paint? Oh, you said green, but it's green. No, you don't say that way. So just, it could be a warmer, could be a downer, could be a little activity. Aoife, the gymnastic thing, when you're in the middle of a lesson and people are getting a bit bored and you get them up and you ask them to stretch. Well, you can ask them to stretch. This also, that could be another way. So I think you can just, input it anytime during your lesson, as long as you do it on a regular basis, to the extent that students don't feel as if it's something, oh God, not pronunciation. Well, no, it's just another aspect in order to help you. That's all.
Yeah, I sometimes do little minimal pair exercises as a warmer. So, stand up if it's this sound, or sit down if it's this sound, or put up your, if you have 2 columns of sounds, and put up your left hand if it's the long oo sound, put up your right hand if it's a short oo sound, and things like that can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's the whole thing about the presentation that I gave was about, basically, when we looked at the microscale, that microscale table, we saw lots of, I don't know if you remember some of it, there was perception, decoding skills, and language skills, using knowledge of the world, dealing with information, interacting with the speaker. That's one table. There are different other ways to, to categorize those microscales. Yes. But within the perception decoding skill, I only touched on two little things, which was recognizing syllable reductions due to weak forms and elision, and assimilation. But like you said, those minimal pairs are absolutely amazing for the decoding skill of recognizing individual phonemes, or recognizing, you can use also other ways for recognizing phoneme sequences which form sounds, recognizing word boundaries, stressed syllables. So the stressed syllable, you know, with the lowering the sound of, you know, the volume so that they can only pick up certain, you know, the stressed syllable, and from that they get it. There's loads that you can do, and that's the whole thing about bottom-up listening, is that you don't have to concentrate on just one or two decoding skill. You know, there are a lot to choose from, and you don't have to do them all at the same time. Just do one until you feel comfortable with it. It has to be, you also as a teacher you have to be comfortable with it. You know, you try it a little bit, then you see what went right, what you couldn't remember when you know, when they ask you a question and you couldn't answer it, and then you go back to your books, you read up a little bit more on it, you come back the next day, and then you do a little bit more on this until you feel comfortable with that notion of connected speech. Then you can move on to the next one. Somebody asked the question, is it possible for students to work on improve listening by themselves, or teachers can ask them to do outside the class? I mean, let me know if you agree. I mean, there are books, whole books. I don't remember the publisher, but there are whole books about how to teach pronunciation exercises. There are whole books out there that also provide CDs or whatever nowadays you call them. I mean, you know, like now, I guess you would have a link to an MP3 somewhere in the, you know, in the cloud. Grandma is talking right now, sorry. So yes, you have, you know, there are books with audio presented to you that allows you to develop these things. I think that could be one. Another thing would be if you have access to any kind of transcript. So if you manage to like listen, you know, people say, oh, the more you listen, the better you get at it. No, really. Listen to it with a transcript and note down what you missed. I think that's possible to do at home. Okay, so maybe, I don't know what could be with a transcript, could be a movie script. You know, you watch your favorite movie, and movie scripts are available online for free. So you could watch your favorite scene from your favorite movie, as long as it's not Titanic, I'm okay. And then, you know, you go and you read the script or lyrics. Well, yes, podcast, TED Talks with the scripts. Thank you, Edvig. I hadn't thought of that. You're completely right. Lyrics would work also, but sometimes this music is so, you know, loud that I'm not sure. Again, grandma's talking. But yeah, that would work also. And also the connected speeches would, you know, the features would be highlighted, I think, even more. I don't know if you agree with me, Aoife, on that, in the songs, because it's you know, there's no, like in the books, oh, we are going to the whatever is, I'm gonna. So, and sometimes you dropped even some other things. So what do you think, Aoife?
I think recording yourself is really important, you know, to be aware of your own pronunciation. And it's not a nice thing to do. It's not really nice to hear yourself back, but it's very useful. And so to have a model and maybe to get, you know, short little dialogues or short little articles or short little things from the textbook, everyone goes home and records themselves, and we listen back and we listen to each other's pronunciation and things. I think that can be very useful, just having an awareness of, you know, the bad and the good points of your pronunciation in another language, because often you're completely unaware of how you sound in another language, particularly at the beginning, and awareness of other people's pronunciation and in the class as well too, and just discussing that and having it as a topic, and it not always being about how good people are at grammar or who got the grammar question right. I think that can be really
it's amazing. Nice. Yeah, I mean, you know, those WhatsApp groups that you can make with your students, whereby they have to say the same sentence. And this is something they can do at home. They say the same sentence, then they compare if the, you know, people put the stress in the right place. Maybe people would put the stress in different places, because it would be, what do you call that? Stress linked to, can't remember the term. Stress linked to what you mean. So basically, it's different meanings. So, you know, oh, thank you for coming, and thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. You know, so yeah, attitudes. Thank you. Couldn't remember that word. I mean, it is 10:15 for me, so I am old. So yes, attitude. Anything that's linked with attitudes, definitely. I mean, and that's great because again, this is one of the decoding skills, recognizing, you know, the intonation and where you put the stress and you know, I mean, you can go into catenations and stuff like that, but you know, at least that has an element of fun. And prom should be fun, but also should be seen as being essential, because you cannot understand a text, the gist of it, the whatever of it, if you do not decode the actual sounds and what's happening with each of them. If you hear a word, a weird word like green, what's green? I don't know that word. Is that a new word? Has English gone insane and invented new words? No, it's just that you're not able to decode it. So let's just stop. And you know how students are. As soon as they go, oh, I didn't get all the answers again. What can I do to improve my listening? And everybody says, oh, just listen to more English. That won't work. And then they feel like the failure. They feel like the failure because they didn't do it right. Well, from a certain point of view, it's our fault. We didn't do it right. We didn't help them. We didn't provide them with the tools to be able to achieve that. And that's not fair. It's setting them up for failure when we could, with one or two little tweaks, actually help them.
And as a teacher, sometimes even with lower levels, you know, if I'm teaching a new form, I might say the sentence quite slowly, and then I'll say it a little bit faster, and then I'll say it really fast, and then they can try to do that as well. And it doesn't really matter so much if they're a low level. They don't need to be able to speak at speed, but it's good. It's a good exercise to raise awareness, as you were saying, and to be aware that, you know, native speakers won't always speak so clearly and pronounce every part of the sentence. So I think that's something that we can do as teachers, is to grade our language, of course, but not always to keep it at graded language for the entire lesson, you know.
I mean, I completely agree with grading your language. I mean, this is a big thing, especially in teacher training, when you go from a high level to a low level and then they don't grade their language and it becomes, you know, they use words with more than 4 syllables with pre-int and you're like, what are you doing? However, grading the language doesn't mean that you speak like this, because it doesn't help. I mean, they still have to have the right, keep the right connected speech features going. Otherwise, you are failing at providing an accurate model of spoken language, you know? So that's an issue. I mean, I've noticed, I am non-native. I'm French initially. So I learned the language when I was 11. You know, when I had to move to London for my parents, you know, my father's work. So I moved to London and I picked up the language from around me. But still, I noticed that, you know, at the beginning of my career, when I would teach French speakers, I would automatically revert back to a very French accent, because this is what I thought this would work. And I'm not dissing the French accent. I rock it. But that's what I noticed, that we think it helps the learners by going slower and not connect, but we are not providing them with the correct model. And if they don't hear the correct model, especially with these features of connected speech, then how can they identify it when they are trying to listen? So I completely agree, Aoife. I think your idea is great. Start slow. That's all right, so that they understand, then a bit faster, and then at normal speed. So you allow them to, you know, slowly process the information and identify, and maybe even Aoife at the same time notice, go, okay, so I'm going to say it again slowly and again very fast. Tell me what you notice. So always these awareness raising activities, those little noticing, zero prep. It's just you and your voice. Absolutely fine. And this again will raise the awareness every time you teach a new structure. You know, you just go, okay, slow, fast. What do you notice? What happens? What disappears? Don't use word like elided. Just say what disappears, what changes. And just that way they go, oh, well, it does change. And poof. I mean, I've done it with pre-in students. you know, and they were like, why weren't we told this before? Why is today I've been in this institute or whatever language center for like 2 years, a year. How come this is the first time I hear about this? I'm like, I don't know.
Yes.
You don't know?
Yeah. So Hetty has a question about drilling as an important awareness, important to raise students' awareness. Is drilling an important tool?
I mean, yeah, I think so. I mean, drilling is important when it comes to, for example, recognizing individual phonemes or recognizing phoneme sequences that form, you know, that form sounds and then words. Yeah, but make sure that it's not completely, that what I mind about drilling is that it becomes this very dry activity with completely devoid of meaning and completely devoid of context. So what I do try is I try to, it doesn't have to be dry. It doesn't have to be dry. That's the whole thing. So you have to tell them, okay, so let's take, you know, maybe something somebody said before, something, you know, so always link it to the context, link it to, you know, maybe a news story, and then drill one of the words, like show something, like show something on the news, you know, a headline, and then from the, and the headline has the word by magic, has the word that you want to drill, so that they have the context a little bit. And it does help when they have, you know, this understanding of the word and how you use it in context, then it helps them. You just feed in the pronunciation, so it becomes like, oh, this is helping me understand more of the world, not just let's do this activity, repeat after me. What do you think, Aoife?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm kind of a fan of drilling because it really helped me when I speak Japanese. I lived in Japan for a while, and then I understood the value of drilling when I became a student and to learn a completely different language. And the best teacher I had just drilled me, and eventually I became fluent in that way. And I tried for years other ways of learning. So then I began to teach drilling a little bit more and to use that as a strategy for lower level learners. And I think just to get them actually speaking the language and communicating and starting to speak without thinking and trying to work out the sentence in their head, I think it's great. And prompting, and then, you know, when they don't know the answer, just whispering it to them so that they can just say it and you can keep the flow going. I think it's great. So I'm a big fan of it with lower levels, and I think it's great for fluency.
One thing you've just reminded me of is the whispering. That's something I think, I can't remember who asked for more exercise with stress, you know, awareness raising. But that's one thing you can do. And it's a type of drilling, but with a twist, whereby you ask them to repeat the words, but with different voices. So once they have to do it whispering, then once they have to do it shouting, then once they have to be an ogre, or they have to be a little princess, or, you know, so make it, I like drilling, but as long as we present it, it doesn't have to be in a fun way, but it has to be in an interesting and integrative way so that they understand its value. And by changing the voice, by whispering it and then whispering and then shouting it, they still have to keep the stress in the right place. So it is still drilling, you're still working on the sounds, but it adds an element of something extra to the drilling, which I think is very good. Somebody said also it would depend on the class and the learner. How do you think about the use of phonemic chart? Do you think, yeah, I mean, like I said, when the phonemic chart was introduced 15, I can't remember how many years ago, 15, 16, 17 years ago, in the English file, I was like, I'm not doing it. But then my DOS at the time told me, just, okay, it's all right, you don't have to do everything. Just every time you have a schwa, and you write it on the board, just underneath, just write the schwa symbol. That's it. That's all I'm asking you. Just do that at the beginning. And there's the schwa. So I did it for like, I don't know, a week or two. And at the beginning, they were like, what is that? And I was like, well, you know, I explained it's the sound. And they were like, oh, okay. So I start, and then they were like, and then I would stop doing it. And they were like, Miss, didn't you forget something? Oh, did I? I'm sorry. And then they would tell me. And then after they mastered that, then I would introduce the, and then these sounds that nobody likes, and then, but little by little, very little. And I think it does. You can't just show them the entire alphabet and go, hello, this is your new best friend. You have to introduce it slowly and work on that, the same way as the features of connected speech when it comes to bottom-up listening, I think. What do you think, Aoife?
Yeah, I do teach it, and I find English File very good for that as well too. So, the student site as well is really good online. So especially if you're not a native speaker, it has, the phonemic chart, just like it has in the book. And then they can, they can touch screen, or they can click on the sound, and they can see all the sounds on English File. So if you just Google English File and whatever level, and the student site, and go into pronunciation, it's all there. So yeah, I get
English
them to
File is
learn.
amazing,
Yeah,
with the
it's
pictures.
very good. Yeah,
With the pictures. Oh, it saved
Yeah.
my life. I couldn't
Yeah.
remember the correspondence, but then I could see, because I'm a visual learner, I could see
Yeah.
that picture, and especially,
Yeah.
up, that little arrow up. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, thank God.
And then you can teach it that way too. It's very good. You can say, so for example, the short I sound, what do you think it is? And it's a picture of the fish. That's right, it's a fish. And then this one, what is it? Oh, it's a tree. It's the long sound. And you can use the pictures like that to make it a bit more interactive. And yeah, so I think I get them to learn it, and then do, if I'm teaching a new set of words, so say if it's, vegetables, English File is great for that. It has a list, or else you can just find the phonetic transcript yourself for 10 vegetables, and I just write them on the board phonetically. And I say, okay, this is what we're going to learn today. What do you think the word is? And they have their chart to help them, and they work it out, and they get them, and it becomes like a little quiz at the beginning of the class. So the first thing they learn is the pronunciation. And then afterwards we look at the picture for the word, or the meanings of the word. So,
I mean, it's completely different. Normally they always go MFP. You have to do MFP or MPF in case it's Lexis. But no, I mean, you can just start, and it's a nice way to just introduce and raise awareness. It's great. I mean, I remember way back we did, for the phonemic, for the pronunciation thing for Delta, they gave us entire sentences, and you had to, you had to decode them. And I was like, oh no, but one word.
Yeah.
Or even if you wanted to start even less difficult, maybe you write one or two letters normal, but then the rest of the word would be in phonemic script, so that they have a little bit of, so you start really baby steps, and then you give the whole word. That's a great one, Aoife.
And Macmillan online, the dictionary, or there's other dictionaries I'm sure as well too. I just use Macmillan. They'll always have it written, phonetically. And so sometimes I just say them, well, if I'm prepping, I just put in my 10 words, and I get the phonetic transcript, and you can, press it and hear the sound.
Yeah.
Or I ask them to do it as well too. They can, I ask them to check the pronunciation online, and they go in and we look at the sound. And
I mean, there are some websites which are phonemic transcription. I can't remember what the name is. You just enter phonemic transcription, and what it does is that you enter the word, automatically gives it to you as a phonemic, as in the correct script. But it works for individual words, but it when it comes to, because for certain teacher training courses, you have to provide the phonemic script for the word that you're going to teach, and they all go, oh my God. And I tell them, I said, just go to the dictionary, don't reinvent the wheel, it's already there. Go to the dictionary, or go on the phonemic transcription website. When they have structures, you go on that, so you get the symbols, but then it doesn't help with the, it doesn't do assimilation, it doesn't do elision, doesn't do anything, catenation. So what you do is at least you get the phonemic transcription of the structure, then you take it on the side, and then you repeat it orally yourself, the structure you said, and then you try to pick up what's happening, what are the sounds that have changed, elided, whatever, and then you take that phonemic transcription you got from the computer and then you alter it. So it's great for individual words, for whole sentences, then you have to input a little bit more. But yeah, there are websites that will do that for you. Type something, they give it to you automatically in the right. It's quite great, actually.
Brilliant.
Saved quite a lot of CELTA trainings, I have to admit.